Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from simpleprogrammer.com. And so I have a book review for you today. If you want to see all my book reviews, you can check out the playlist here. Every time that I'm reading a book or listening to an audio version of the book, I'm pretty much doing a review now, except for if it's some kind of book that I don't want you to know that I read. No, I'm just kidding. Well, maybe, I don't know. There might be a few of those. We'll see, But I pretty much, you know me, right? I'm pretty open and honest here. So I'd have to have a pretty good reason for hiding, that romance novel that I read. So anyway, the book today that I'm going to be talking about is called My Big Toe, or My Big Theory of Everything. And I don't know where this book, someone recommended, one of you crazy people out here on my YouTube channel, you must have recommended it to me because this is a crazy ass book, seriously. It's really interesting. I don't know where I stand on this. This is like, for a while back when I used to watch TV, which I don't anymore, I watched this show called Fringe, and this reminds me of Fringe. So the premise of the book, and I've only read the first, there is a 3-volume set. And the idea of the book is that it's a theory of everything in the universe, of how everything works and how everything, including physics and relativity and quantum physics and Newtonian physics and supernatural events and oneness and the whole reincarnation, and all of that works. It's a theory that kind of fits it all together. The author of the book spent some time doing, and I don't want to like you should still read the book if you're interested, but he practiced doing out-of-body experiences, and that's where he sort of stumbled on some of this stuff, and apparently he did it in a lab setting, and they were figuring out how they could do this, and he's got a fairly big following on his forums of people that claim this. I'm not so sure. He's a very interesting author, very smart person. I think that the author is, he's a nuclear physicist, very educated, very nicely written book, right? Lots of humor, and he's got these like sub points in the book. It's very analytical. I almost feel like the author possibly could be schizophrenic, but he's got a huge amount of clarity. There's definitely some weirdness going on here, but he basically has this. In the book, he might take a bunny trail, like a sub point that he's going to talk about, and he'll have that indented and bracketed a certain way, and he could have a sub point off of a sub point. I think he's had 3 nested sub points where he goes off on these rabbit trails and then comes back, and then you're at 3rd level down. It's pretty insane. But he's got a pretty. First, he tells his story in this first section of the book, and how he got into all of this, and he started off with a very analytical engineering person. Very much, at first when I was reading his story, it very much echoed my story, right? Because, of course, I've done these videos on, John, why are you such a new age, whatever? and I talked about how that happened for me, where I was very analytical, very skeptical. And he had this experience. I think his experience is he started with transcendental meditation, and he realized, he started to gain some wider perspective from that, and then he started zoning out and having these out-of-body experiences, and he realized that there was value from this, and he could reproduce this. And he takes a very rigorous scientific approach to supernatural, to kind of weird things like ESP, and he genuinely believes and has tested these things. Now, I remain I remain skeptic on this, because this just seems a little bit out there, and I haven't seen any corroborating evidence, but he does put together a fantastic story, which I don't quite buy. Like I said, I'm still skeptical. I don't think I'm going to read book 2 and 3, just because I feel like it's a little, he takes a few assumptions, too many assumptions, even though he's smart and educated, and it's just a little bit too strange for even me. But I feel like there's a lot of value in the book, honestly. I feel like just the way that he thinks about things, and there's some really, really lucid, valid points in here. One of them is concerning belief. So he talks about in the book this idea how belief is ridiculous. How basically belief is not having information. And he talks about having scientific rigor, and that when you believe something, you're not applying any kind of scientific rigor. You're taking a leap of faith. And he goes and he makes some really good arguments around that. I'm not as articulate as he is in explaining those, so it's definitely worth reading the book just to get those arguments and to break your mind out of this sort of pattern that we have. We have these limiting beliefs. We have these beliefs that harm us, and they're not based off of evidence. They're just based off of what we believe. And when those beliefs are threatened, we assume very much that the universe is much smaller, that we know more than we do, right? And in fact, that's what he contrasts, is belief versus knowledge. And there's a huge difference between the two. So he goes a lot of different places, like I said, and it's a 3-volume set. I've only read the first book in the trilogy, but eventually he goes on to say that, to basically, I don't want to ruin the book for you, but essentially his explanation, his theory of everything, is that we're essentially living in a virtual reality, a virtual world, which is interesting because Elon Musk had talked about this idea that he thinks it's highly probable. And when you read through this guy's theory, it sort of makes a lot of sense. It's definitely possible. And there's a lot of ways to interpret this, right? I think that his theory does not conflict with a lot of other models that we have. I think his big theory of everything is sort of this super theory, and then these smaller religions and beliefs that we have. I don't want to say belief is probably not the right word, but viewpoints, models that we have for the universe, for spirituality, for supernatural, for physics, for all these things, that they're just smaller pieces. They don't have the big enough viewpoint. So, and he makes a distinction between non-permanent physical reality and PRM, or non-permanent reality, whatever it is, matter, and PRM, permanent reality matter, or whatever. I may be screwing these up, but it really is a well put together piece. Quite possibly, some of this is actually true. It makes some sense here. It's definitely a difficult read, very scientific, very much rigor. If you can believe it, the combination. So I think this is a book, again, he says to approach it with a skeptic mind, right? He does not expect you to take this at face value, and he goes through that multiple times. But it's humorous, it's interesting. I believe that this book is beneficial because of that. I feel like it'll stretch your mind. Again, I would take it with a grain of salt. I'm not saying this is a true thing, but it's possible, certainly possible. And I think it's worth a read, just simply for the point of stretching your mind, right? How many of us, have read about or seriously considered some of these outlandish things that he's put together in a theory that all works together, right? These pieces seem to work together, even though they're far out there. So anyway, whoever recommended this book, you crazy, I don't know. This is probably one of the craziest books I've ever read. But again, I don't know. I'm tempted to read the second and third book, but these are long and hard reads. So I don't know if I will. Maybe I'll get around to it someday, or maybe some of you will convince me to read this. But it's really interesting. Again, I would give it, I don't know. I'm not rating the books, but it's definitely, it doesn't get a thumbs down for me. It gets a thumbs up because it's if you have the time, if you're willing to put the effort in, I would recommend it. It's worth reading. My Big Theory of Everything, and yeah, so. We'll see. Maybe I'll do another report if I end up going on and reading book 2 and book 3 of the trilogy. All right, so that's all I have for that review. If you want to catch my other reviews, like I said, you can check out the playlist here, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.